Hi, my name is Ms. Hanson, and today I want to talk to you about graphing cosine functions. First, let's look at the properties of cosine functions. Suppose y equals a cosine b theta, with a not equal to 0, b greater than 0, and theta in radians. Absolute value of a is the amplitude of the function. B is the number of cycles in the interval from 0 to 2 pi. And 2 pi over b is the period of the function. So if we want to graph a cosine function, we can use this information to help us with our graph. So here's an example. We want to sketch the graph of y equals 1.5 times cosine 2 theta in the interval from 0 to 2 pi. So first of all, we need to find the amplitude. Well, if we look at our equation, y equals a cosine b theta, this is our a, 1.5, and absolute value of 1.5 is our amplitude. So our amplitude, absolute value of 1.5, is just 1.5. Cosine 2 theta tells us that b equals 2. So that means in the interval from 0 to 2 pi, where we're going to be graphing this function, there are actually 2 cycles of the cosine function from 0 to 2 pi. Now to find the period, we're just going to go 2 pi over b, so that's 2 pi over 2, so the period is pi. Okay? So now let's graph our function. To graph a cosine function, we can graph 5 equally spaced points in each cycle. So for a greater than 0, we want to graph our maximum, 0, minimum, 0, maximum. So the first thing we need to do, I've drawn the axis and labeled the theta axis, pi and 2 pi, so I've labeled our theta axis and figured out our scale. Now we need to use our amplitude to figure out our scale for the y-axis. And since our amplitude is 1.5, I'm going to go by 0.5. So I have 0.5, 1, 1.5, 2, and negative 0.5, negative 1, negative 1.5, negative 2. Okay? So our first point on when theta is 0 is our maximum, which is just 1.5. So I can draw a point at 0, 1.5. Now we want to divide our period into 4 equal parts and graph the 0, min, 0, max pattern. Okay? So pi divided into 4 equal parts, well, pi divided by 4 would give us pi over 4. So we want to look for pi over 4, so let me label some other points. Let's see, if this is pi, then this would be pi over 2. Okay, and this would be 3 pi over 2. So pi over 4 is going to be about halfway between, well, it's going to be exactly halfway between 0 and pi over 2, so it'll be right here. So that's our 0. Now, a pi over 2 is going to be our minimum, which is negative 1.5. And then 3 pi over 4 is going to be 0 again. And then at pi, we have our maximum again, 1.5. Okay? And that's all because I divided pi divided by 4. That gave me pi over 4. And then another pi over 4 would be pi over 2, and then another pi over 4, so etc. We split pi into 4 equal spacings. Now let's do that again. So at pi plus pi over 4, or 5 pi over 4, we have 0 again. And our minimum is going to be at 3 pi over 2. And here we have 0 again, and here we have our maximum. So now we can graph our cosine function using these points. Okay, and here I kind of missed the point somehow. I don't know how I did that. The whole point of connecting the dots is to actually connect the dots. Okay. So there we go. There's our cosine function. And to do that, what we did was, first we labeled our axis, right? And then we found out what our period was and how many repetitions we would have in a set interval from 0 to 2 pi, and what our amplitude was. Okay? Once we found our period, we could divide that into 4 so that we could then find max, 0, min, 0, max, and graph those, and then we can just connect the points. Okay? So we've now graphed y equals 1.5 cosine 2 theta in the interval from 0 to 2 theta. I know you're going to do great on problems that involve graphing cosines, and have a great time. I'll see you next time.